The indictment on Scott Finkbeiner has posted to Pacer, and I have it here for you. So as you probably know, Scott Finkbeiner is the sheriff in Hot Springs County, and he was arrested last week by the FBI. He was arrested on one count of obstruction of justice, and he has since been released from jail, but the indictment just unsealed this morning, and I had the opportunity to read it yesterday. Guys, it is a damning document. I don't know what else to call it. It is a 16-page indictment on what Scott Finkbeiner, whose actual name is Derek Scott Finkbeiner, has been charged with. And let me preface all of this by saying that at this point, these are just allegations. I'm not saying that he actually did this, but I'm saying the FBI says that he actually did this before anyone comes for me. So according to the indictment, Scott Finkbeiner has been very involved in the methamphetamine community there in Malvern for quite a while. And I don't want a single person coming in my comments saying he doesn't look like a meth addict. There are a lot of people that are out there using meth or cocaine or really anything that don't look like addicts. There are people that are functioning addicts in this world. I know a couple of them, and I would have never guessed that they were using, but they are in fact using. On the flip side of that, I have known people where it's very obvious that they are using when they are using. So it could go really both ways. I'm saying that because the indictment says that Scott Finkbeiner uses, it makes it sound like regularly. Really, my impression, before I say what the indictment actually says, my impression of the indictment is that it makes it sound like Scott Finkbeiner got elected as sheriff so that the illegal activities in that county could continue. That's just my impression of it, though. So let's go through the indictment. So pages 1 and 2 just outline information about the person that was writing up the indictment. That's not really that important to this issue. And there's a lot of information in this that is redacted, I believe, to protect the CI that was involved in this. So it says May 16th, 2023, the Malvern Police Department notified the FBI that they had conducted 7 controlled purchases using CI1 at the same address in Perla, Arkansas, which is in Hot Springs County, and that all of those interactions were recorded. Then it says that a person at this address told the CI on April 13th, 2023, that his friend Scott had just been there. He left right before the CI got to the house, and that the friend Scott was the new sheriff. It says the CI confirmed that Scott Finkbeiner was the person that they were talking about by sending a photograph, and then that on May 21st, 2023, the CI was at this address not working as a CI and was told that Scott Finkbeiner was about to come over. It also says between 12 and almost 3 a.m. on May 21st, 2023, Scott Finkbeiner exchanged 11 calls and 2 messages with this number, and that was all backed up by Scott Finkbeiner's Verizon records. My grandma used to always say there is nothing that you can do after dark that you can't do before dark. So basically, like, you're a sheriff. What are you out doing at 2, 3 a.m.? You got to be a sheriff the next day. Then it says on May 21st, 2023, the CI went out into the driveway and met Scott Finkbeiner. He was wearing a green polo shirt with gold writing and some sort of vest. Scott Finkbeiner talked to the CI, and then he removed his badge and his firearm and left them in his car before walking in the house. The person in the house handed Scott Finkbeiner a meth pipe, and he smoked from it, and then Scott Finkbeiner propositioned the CI for a BJ, even offering the person $60. And the person was like, dude, so-and-so is here, because they had walked out of the room, and Scott was like, he's the one that suggested it. I've known him for 35 to 40 years. We're like brothers. Then Scott got the person, CI, to smoke from the pipe, and then had them sit beside him on the couch, and then it details the hand job that was done. And according to the FBI, all of this is being recorded. Then on August 3rd, the CI went to go do a controlled buy. The person knocked at the door for a while. Finally, the door was answered. It was like 9 a.m. They ran into a person named Joe that identified themselves as Joe in the hallway. And they figured out that that was actually Scott Finkbeiner, who was heading out to go to work. It said Scott Finkbeiner had his black sedan, being his cop car, parked back in a tree line, like back behind the house where no one could see it. And the CI was like, does no one wonder where he is? And the person was like, they can't say ish. He's the sheriff. He'll fire their butts. Then they talked about how Scott Finkbeiner ran someone named Rainer or Raymond out of town. They also talked about a Facebook post where some girl went on Facebook and said, somebody needs to tell Scott he's stopping down at Mr. Blank's house and getting high on crack. He's stopping me from making money because they see his car down there. So after the control purchase was completed, the CI talked to special agents and confirmed that Scott Finkbeiner was the person in the house. And then right after that time, right after the CI left the house, they saw a law enforcement vehicle leave the address and actually followed that law enforcement vehicle to Finkbeiner's home address. And then it talks about some more calls that were made, but then it gets to the part about the video surveillance footage. So according to the indictment, the FBI put up video surveillance footage on August 18th, 2023. The next day at like almost 1 a.m., the video captured a white vehicle drive up to the residence. Then they saw blue lights flashing that were consistent with a police vehicle. A black male comes out of the home. And then there's a white female, and they're both talking to the person that is inside of the vehicle. After like 10 minutes, the female starts motioning in the direction of the surveillance camera. And then someone who looked a whole lot like Scott Finkbeiner got out of the vehicle, shined his flashlight at the camera directly, and then got back in his vehicle. So like I said, that was just before 1 a.m. Later that same day, August 19th, Scott Finkbeiner called the FBI and talked to a special agent and started asking questions about a poll camera that he said his CI identified the camera 2 to 3 days before. But that couldn't be true because they had just put up the poll camera. The special agent didn't seem to have any information about the poll camera, but Scott Finkbeiner told the agent that he went over there, he saw the poll camera himself, and said he would be shocked if there was any major narcotics on that road. Then Scott Finkbeiner starts to say that his CI lives in that area, and he's using the CI in a theft of city funds case. Finkbeiner then got the name of the agent that was related to the poll camera, tried to call them. He eventually got a call back that same day and started telling the person that he knew this person, I guess about the poll camera. He knew the person that was being surveilled. They're a shady individual, and yeah, they've used drugs, but they've never been a drug seller. Scott Finkbeiner said, I drive through there all the time, and then started asking who the target was of the FBI surveillance. Then he talks about why he went by that address in the early morning hours and said basically that person is a drug user. He doesn't think he's a drug dealer. And there are a lot of people in and out of that house, but that's because the guy has a lot of girls that come over and, visit him for other reasons. Then on August 22nd, so a few days later, Scott Finkbeiner went in the prosecutor's office. There was a Malvern Police Department lieutenant in there, and Scott Finkbeiner basically went in there and raised a bunch of stink because of this poll camera and the FBI investigation. Scott Finkbeiner was even discussing the possibility of establishing a 14-block perimeter around that area so the FBI couldn't go in there. And then if they did, he would arrest every one of them, he said. And then he went back in the prosecutor's office the next day and continued just, like I said, raising a stink about this poll camera, how it's impeding his investigation, and how his CI is a good guy that he's known for a long time. So according to the affidavit, Scott Finkbeiner said he had a meeting with the FBI set up. And if he didn't like the way that the meeting went, he was going to tell his informant not to talk to the FBI. The prosecutor said that Scott Finkbeiner seemed real amped up and angry at the FBI, and even mentioned going to the Sheriff's Association or someone that he knew in the media to make a bigger deal out of the FBI poll camera. Then the affidavit just goes on to sum everything up. It talks about how Scott Finkbeiner facilitated a sex act and arranged the sale of narcotics while he was at this address. It said Scott Finkbeiner and this person exchanged 130 calls from January to October. 108 of those calls were made after 8 p.m. but before 3 a.m. And 63 of those calls were made after 10 p.m. So that's pretty much it. It does say that the activity, the phone call activity, is not consistent with how a legitimate police officer would conduct any sort of investigation, and that it is more consistent with drug activity. I mean, you can take that for what it is. I don't know anything about that, except I just can't understand how you could be up 2, 3, however late a.m., stay in the night at drug houses, and then get up and go to work the next morning and be a sheriff in any kind of county. But that's just my opinion. So this is the affidavit. You can read it on Pacer if you would like to set up an account and do that. You can pause to read if you want to go back and view any part of it. I don't know. It sounds like a pretty solid case in my opinion, but we'll see. Hot Springs County Sheriff Scott Finkbeiner has issued a press release, and if nothing else, it's a little bit comical. It's giving Bill Clinton 1990s. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Anyway, in all seriousness, the press release says, I want to start by saying, please pray for my family and friends. This has been a nightmare for all of us. We are working on my legal defense, and I have been advised by legal counsel to not discuss my case until the appropriate time. However, I do want to emphatically say I did not obstruct justice in any way. In fact, it is the contrary. Thank you for the huge outpouring of support. It is my hope that you can all come to the trial and see the truth. I will discuss more at a later date. Thank you, Sheriff Scott Finkbeiner. So I guess the thing to ask now is if you have seen the indictment or seen any videos about the case, what do you think? What's your opinion? Also, this meme is not mine. I can't take credit for it, but it's just too good to not share.